Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Carolyn Ross here, and today we're going to be talking about core beliefs. Now, you may not know what those are, but I'll tell you what those are, so stay tuned. I hope you've had a good Monday. Mine has been a little bit troubling. I had a gas leak and then a plumbing issue all in one day and having to work on the same day. So I got to practice a lot of the skills that I teach my clients in the Anchor program today. Well, let's just dive right into the subject of core beliefs. So maybe you can identify with the situation where you may have really wanted to change your behaviors, but you ended up feeling frustrated because you were not able to. You couldn't stop binging or overeating or even stop obsessing about food or your body. And you may have even said to yourself, something seems to be in the way. If so, you were probably right. And what's in the way are core beliefs that you are not consciously aware of and that are blocking your progress toward your desired goal. These core beliefs don't have to control you, though. When you understand what they are and how they developed, you can change them and replace them with what I call guiding principles that will help the new you flourish. So what are core beliefs? Well, a core belief is a doctrine or rule about life that usually develops in response to difficult situations or situations in which you feel your survival is threatened, or for which you do not have adequate coping skills. So obviously anything that happens to you when you're a child, you wouldn't normally have enough coping skills to deal with that. Core beliefs are often then formed in childhood or during intense emotional or traumatic experiences. Now, core beliefs really form survival strategies that helped you survive whatever you had to go through. So they're not bad in and of themselves, because they did, in some ways, they came out of those survival mechanisms. So for example, if your parents divorced when you were 9 years old and your relationship with one of them was severed, like, dad remarried and you no longer had a relationship with him, or mom, either way, you may feel a lot of emotions at that age, but you don't understand them and you don't know how to cope with them. So you cope the best you can, and you develop some kind of rule or core belief to keep your feelings under control. This rule may be something like, never let anyone see me upset, or I have to take care of myself because no one else will, or when I eat cookies, I don't feel upset. At the time, this rule saves you. It helps you feel better, at least emotionally. However, as you become an adult, these behaviors that are part of, and these core beliefs, that little negative voice in the back of your head saying you're not worthy or something's wrong with you, that can cause a lot of problems as you grow up. And at the same time, you may forget how these beliefs came about. So you may take them as, oh, that's true, that's a fact, when in point it's really not a fact. It's just a belief that you develop during these difficult times. So as a result, you may be acting from beliefs that no longer even serve you, or in fact are the opposite of what you really want to have in your life right now. Therefore, although they may have served a very important purpose when initially formed, or may be the result of your understanding of a situation that you really didn't know how to cope with when you were younger, they can sabotage you as you get older. So, but wait, before we eliminate these core beliefs, it's first important to understand how these served you in the past, because part of you is still using these beliefs to protect you. So imagine you were able to surgically remove that outdated core belief. How would the need that's being served be met? So let's look at an example from a patient that I had a little bit ago. Tony was 36. He struggled with compulsive overeating and since he was in his teens. He was not overweight as a child, just the opposite. He had asthma and he was really skinny and sickly until his teen years. As a result, his mom worried about him and pampered him. She even prepared special foods for him and didn't allow him to get overheated or exert himself too much. And when Tony and his older brother got into mischief, his older brother always would get punished, while Tony was told, just go to your room and calm down. So this increased the normal sibling rivalry, as you can imagine, to the point where Tony's brother often punished Tony in private, beating him up when their mother wasn't around. Well, over time, Tony got taller and bigger than his brother. And then during one of their arguments, Tony actually tore his brother's bedroom door right off the hinges in a fit of rage and scared the bejesus out of his brother. From that moment on, Mike could no longer beat him up. For the first time in his life, Tony felt more powerful than his older brother. So later, when he and I were working together, he was able to remember that experience and realize that in that moment, he formed core beliefs that were driving his life right now. So let's look at one of the core beliefs. One is stay in your comfort zone to feel safe. Now remember, Tony's comfort zone came about because his mom was worried about him getting upset and getting an asthma attack. So whenever anything got heated, he was told, just go to your room and calm down. So from that, whenever he felt uncomfortable, whenever he was angry, he would feel uncomfortable. When he was frustrated, when he was sad, all of those were not part of his comfort zone. So in his marriage, for example, this led to a lot of problems. He felt that his wife didn't accept him and that he wasn't good enough for her because he couldn't meet her emotional expectations. Okay, now Tony's second core belief is even more powerful for him, and that one is bigger is better. In Tony's mind, his ability to intimidate his brother was closely linked to being, as a teenager, bigger than his brother Mike. As an adult, when Tony dieted and successfully lost weight, his smaller size made him feel physically vulnerable again. And then he would regain all of the weight, which makes sense because bigger is better in his unconscious. In his marriage, his wife was the financial heavyweight. She was wealthy and he was not. And he unconsciously tried to equalize that power differential by literally being bigger than his wife. So this core belief was sabotaging his ability to achieve what he really wanted, to be healthy, to be strong, to have a good marriage, to be able to, play with his kids without being out of breath. So for Tony, these core beliefs, while they allowed him to identify the many areas of his life they were unconsciously influencing. This helped him to understand why he found himself unable to accomplish the goals that he really in his heart felt committed to. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. Although Tony's story can give you a sense of how core beliefs form, you may still have more questions about this. Some important things to remember about core beliefs. First of all, when they form in the beginning, they serve a specific purpose or fill a need or are in response to a difficult or emotional time in your life. And then they become unconscious. Now, all of us have core beliefs that we've forgotten about, and they're now on autopilot. And we continue to act from these beliefs whether we know it or not. So here's another example. If you grew up in a family with a father who was very violent when he was drinking, you may have tried to protect yourself from this chaos and abuse by becoming a very tough kid and later a tough adult. So you say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, what's wrong with it? It may be difficult for you to let your guard down and let people get close to you when you want them to. So even though this coping behavior served a purpose to protect you, when you're from your violent alcoholic dad, it may no longer be relevant. So that's what's important to remember. So let's look again at what are some of the purposes that core beliefs serve. So if you were the tough kid I mentioned above, that core belief would keep you from getting close to people, preventing the kind of disappointment that you felt with your dad. However, you might also forget that the real desire in your heart that inspired you to get tough was your desire to get close to your dad. So although you could feel intense anger towards him, beneath that anger was really sadness and loss, a sense of disconnection from someone you really, really wanted to be close to. But once that core belief is in place, it works very hard on your behalf to keep you from pain. So even if your dad were maybe to come back and try to make amends to you, you may find yourself so shut down that you're not able to reconnect with that need to be close to him. Therefore, when you're keeping people away, being the tough guy, and later the tough adult, also keeps you from having what you really want, which is close relationships with maybe your father and others. Core beliefs can also form if you've been a victim of neglect. Say you had a parent with mental illness, or a parent with a chronic illness, or someone who was drug or alcohol problems, had drug or alcohol problems. You may have been neglected, forming the core belief that you have to take care of yourself because no one else will. So as you grew up, you may have become very competent, very independent, but so competent that others became intimidated or felt that they couldn't really make a meaningful contribution to your life. Or you may have been very stressed and overwhelmed, feeling as if you had to do everything on your own. And these feelings of stress then can lead to overeating or binge eating or food addiction. Okay, so hopefully now you have a better understanding of what core beliefs are and how and why they form. So how do you identify these core beliefs? Well, core beliefs tend to be related to primal or fundamental human needs, the need for love, acceptance, support, self-expression, empowerment, the need to be heard, etc. These needs that surround them are all clues to your core belief. Follow these clues and we can identify the core belief. So let's look at a couple clues, all right? The first clue, major life events you've experienced. So these major life events are pivotal and they can change your life or your perception. So thinking back on like big things that happen in your life, whether it be your parents were divorced, or as I mentioned earlier, one of your parents struggled with drug or alcoholism, drug abuse or alcoholism, or one of your parents was chronically depressed, somebody had cancer, or you lost someone that you love. Well, the change in you gives you a clue that will guide you to a core belief that you may have formed. The clue number 2 is your interpretation of what happened to you and how you coped. So if you look at a couple of the events that we just mentioned from your early life that are most significant to you, as you look over the events, notice any emotions or physical sensations you have. So just examine these events, especially the ones that still hold a strong emotional or sensory charge to them. And any events that kind of set your mind racing with memories, intrusive maybe memories, these are the ones you want to focus on, because the ones that have the charge are the ones that changed you. So if you think about those events, just describe 2 of the events without trying to analyze what happened. Try to remember what this event felt like. So for example, if your mother had chronic depression when you were growing up, you may have coped by trying to be quiet when you were at home from school and taking care of your younger sibling so that she didn't have to, to get out of bed. So again, this core belief may have been, I have to take care of people, or it may have been something like, um, no one will love me unless I take care of them. So that's a clue, again, to how you coped, and therefore a clue to the core belief. So remember, your core beliefs usually represent your interpretation of experiences you were going through at the time and what they meant about you. So if your mother suffered from depression, she may not have been able to take care of you or meet your needs as most mothers do. And this may have led you to conclude that it was your fault you couldn't get what you needed. So to uncover these core beliefs, you have to look at these touchstone experiences, see how you felt, and ask yourself what you said it meant about you that experience was happening in your life. So what do you do once you've done that? If you've explored these key life experiences and identified your core belief, you may not have previously recognized it at a conscious level. It's usually unconscious. And you can see once you identify the core belief that core belief, like I'm worthless, I'm not good enough, no one will love me unless I fill in the blank. All of those kinds of core beliefs may be present in all areas of your life, at work, in relationships, in your when you have relationships within your family. And you can see it kind of playing out in many, many different ways. And it also can be one of the underlying reasons why you are triggered to overeat, binge eat, or to obsess about food. So obviously there's no magic wand to make these problems disappear, but when you understand that if you have that core belief and you have an argument with your boss, the first thing you may think is, it's my fault, I'm worthless, I'm not good enough to do this job. And then what's the first behavior that you have? It's usually going to be something to do with food, right? So think about how these core beliefs then kind of tie into your eating and body image issues. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful to you. And again, you don't want to just automatically get rid of these core beliefs. It's really important to identify them and then to ask yourself, what part of this may still serve me and what part doesn't? So, for example, you may say to yourself, well, I can't see how binge eating is good for me on any level. Well, it's not unusual to feel that way, but if you're having trouble seeing that, just imagine that your best friend grew up in the same household as you did and has the same behaviors you do. Sometimes putting a little distance between you and the behaviors this way, and you can then ask yourself how these behaviors would have helped your friend cope. So most of the time, the behaviors we have are a way to help us cope and helped us in the past survive difficult situations. So it's really important to identify the core beliefs, connect them to your behaviors, be aware of how these core beliefs are present in many different areas of your life, and then decide what you want to do about the core belief. Are there things that serve you about that core belief? Or do you want to let the core belief go entirely? Whenever you're ready to do that, it's not that difficult to let go of a core belief. You can modify it when its costs outweigh its benefits. You can check to see whether the core belief is in alignment with your current goals and morals for your health and well-being, your values, including your desire to stop some of the behaviors related to food and body image issues. So when you're ready to take that step, it's not that difficult to do, and it will literally shift your relationship with food and with your body. So this is something I work with my clients in the Anchor program on a regular basis. And interestingly, the Food Addiction Book Club, which you may have heard about after the Food Addiction Book Sweepstakes, this topic came up during that too. It's a very important topic to address. So in the Anchor program, it's one of the many things we look at as we try to get deeper and deeper to the root cause of why you do the things you do and why you can't change these behaviors that you want so badly to change. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you have some kind of moral failing. It's really that, there's nothing wrong with you. It's really that you have these core beliefs and other survival coping mechanisms that have become unconscious to you. And we want to bring them to consciousness to help you become more aware of them so that you have more of a choice. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and I look forward to getting your questions. Just post them in the comment box. I'm always hoping to get a question while I'm online, but I don't know. I haven't so far. I have a hi from my friend in Canada. Thanks for that. But if you have any questions, just put them in the comment box and I will answer them later. Okay? Thanks again.